This is Ag Marketing IQ in Depth, and today we welcome Eric Relph. He is here to talk to us about the livestock market, which is kind of the high point in the agricultural world these days and has been for quite a while. So welcome to our audience. Welcome to Eric, and let's dive right in. What are you seeing these days, Eric?
Well, right now, the cattle just seem like a freight train that nobody can stop. I don't know that Superman could get in the way of this thing at this point, but that's right about the time when something will happen and turn this thing around. Not saying that it will anytime soon, but it seems that when a market feels invulnerable to anything, that's when you see some kind of a change of direction, and usually it's not for the better. However, even last week with a really quiet cash trade throughout the week, fat cattle traded 57 cents higher on a live basis. We're trading 237.78 average trade last week, according to the AMS report that was released just earlier this week. And really no signs of that stopping. We had major packers outbidding on Saturday, which is unheard of. So this cash market continues to run. The feeder cattle cash market is still very strong as well. And you got the board running a deficit on the fat cattle side and pretty much in line on the feeder cattle side. So although it feels like the futures have just been running for the moon, really they've just been keeping up with the cash on the feeder cattle side of things, and still a $10 to $12 deficit on the live cattle when you look at that front month contract. So super strong market, and I just don't know what's going to turn it around, and hopefully it's nothing too dramatic for the sake of the cattle feeders across the country.
Absolutely. We want to see this run as long as possible, but I do think it's run longer than I've ever seen it.
Oh, absolutely. I made a comment to a colleague that if you'd have bought feeder cattle perfectly during the COVID low and invested about $10,000 into your margin requirement, you'd be sitting on about $500,000 with no margin calls along the way. It's just unprecedented what we're seeing here. And of course, nobody has the patience to stick with a position that long, and everybody's worried that they need to get their cattle protected, and rightfully so. I mean, there's just a ton of dollars out there right now.
Absolutely. And we've seen some things happen that we thought might disrupt the market a little more than they have. What is keeping this market so high?
Sheer numbers. Everybody knows that the cattle are not out there the way that they would normally be. I've always been told that the cattle will always outlast the dollars. And so, I don't know that at the end of the day, it's going to make a huge difference, but we're seeing that supply and demand reflected in the market. We know we killed a lot of cows. We thinned the herd immensely. We're at like a 70-year low on our herd size. The packers know it, the feeders know it, and they're having to bid accordingly. I think this is something that if you look beyond just the numbers, you have to start questioning where's the demand going to be disrupted due to high prices. Eventually, you do destroy a little bit of demand, and we've seen the beef market retreat here over the last week and a half in a significant way. Particularly, choice cuts have kind of taken it on the chin. So you're starting to see some signs of that, but I think the American consumer is pretty resilient, and they like beef, and there's the market remains strong.
Yeah, I was just talking to a fellow who about climate change, and he was talking about how much Americans like their beef. And I said, we're not ashamed of that.
Yeah, no, I went out and bought the biggest piece of prime rib I can buy on Friday night. So I'm definitely in that camp as well.
Absolutely. So as we look at this, there's also been some things happen that kind of have helped this market along. And one of those is New World Screwworm. Where do you see that going? Can you give us kind of a background if we've got some folks who haven't been watching that closely?
Yeah, so starting back in November, it was detected that there was New World Screwworm in Mexico, near the southern border of Mexico. And the cause was arisen, the concern was definitely peaked when you look back at what was going on in the U.S. in the 50s and 60s, and they did get that eradicated. And it has not been a problem since, but it is deadly to the animals if it's not detected quickly and treated immediately. And so it is a big deal, and it could cause some major problems. The big concern initially was how do we keep it at bay and keep it south in Mexico and not bring it into the U.S. So they shut the border down for any live animal imports. That included the feeder cattle was the biggest deal. So all of the ports that ship feeder cattle were shut down immediately. And then they kind of, I would say a little preemptively reopened it and shut it right back down again when it was detected about halfway up into Mexico towards the U.S. And then they decided to come out with a plan to reopen the border in stages starting July 7th. They would start with the northernmost port and work their way south over a series of weeks and try to get these ports reopened for the feeder cattle to come into the U.S. And I think it was the weekend of the 4th. I think it was July 3rd. There were 19 cattle organizations nationwide that petitioned Washington to say, "Hey, this shouldn't be allowed. It's a danger to our cattle herd." And by July 7th, we're shutting it back down again. And so they just halted that. Now, during that time span, also over the 4th of July weekend, there was a case confirmed 360 miles south of the U.S. border in Mexico. So we went from 1,500 miles away to 750 miles away to 350 miles away during that time span that I'm talking about. And so when we're 350 miles from the border in July, definite peaked concern at that point. And now I think you're shut down indefinitely. And they are working really hard to release sterile flies to eradicate the problem, but that all takes time, and not only the R&D and the implementation of it, but the effectiveness of it as well. So they're going to continue to check on things. They're going to continue to test things. I know the USDA has an entourage down there, boots on the ground, kind of checking out what Mexico is doing to stay on top of this and helping out where possible. This continues to be kind of a developing thing, but it continues to limit numbers in the U.S. And you see that reflected in the placements in Texas, particularly. But this all leads us back to a higher market for the time being. As long as we can keep it out of the U.S., that will continue to be the case.
And is that a concern? Even with this shutdown, is that still something that could happen?
Yeah, because it can be transported by any animal infected, and it can affect any mammal. So you think about rabbits, deer, boars, all of these things could be impacted by this worm. Essentially, it's a larva. But anyway, yeah, any of them could transport it. And of course, we're not going to, they're even saying potentially it could be avian transfer. So can birds and insects bring it across for that distance? I'm not going to pretend to understand the logistics of it, but it can definitely get into the U.S. even if we keep the cattle out.
Yeah. So that's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. And as we look at this, New World Screwworm is something that suddenly turned Mexico's market around. Could we end up in that same situation with something just out of the blue? I think so. So why don't you talk to us about that livestock risk protection you've got on the poster behind you?
Yeah.
How can farmers and ranchers protect themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we have several tools in the box that we can use, but LRP is one of them that has really been improved over the last several years. And it's one that makes sense for a lot of folks. It is deferred payment. It is government subsidized. There's a lot of advantages there. It's fixed cost. So you're not going to have to margin call like a lot of folks have had to do in the futures market of late. And with the deferred payment, then it has a little bit of an advantage over the put options as well. But all of those things can be used. And we do work with all of them extensively. So pick your poison. A lot of people don't like paying a premium. A lot of people don't like being subject to margin calls, and everybody has their likes and dislikes in risk management. We wish we didn't have to do it at all and the market would just go up forever, but unfortunately that's not the case, even though it's felt that way for the last 5 years. So you've got so many dollars out there at risk right now. I think there's just ways to conservatively protect yourself, and that's one of them.
I was talking to a rancher not long ago, and one of the things that he hadn't been aware of when he first decided to look into LRP is you can even protect calves before they're born.
You can protect unborn calves, usually for a fairly good amount of time. We don't always have 52 weeks available on the unborns, but it is a program that is offered up to 52 weeks. But we've got to have liquidity in the market to be able to offer the product. And so that's determined by the RMA on a daily basis. Some contracts are available one day that aren't the next day. So that kind of thing happens depending on the volume in the market. But yes, you can protect unborns. We do have cull cow protection now as well. And we have Holstein protection too. So a lot of ways to use the tool other than just feeder steers and heifers.
That sounds like something I'd want to look at if I was a rancher.
Yeah, it's scary amount of money out there right now.
Yeah, and I was raised with the what goes up must come down, and I think we have a lot of conservative folks out there running cattle. So they'd probably like low protection on that as well.
Yeah.
LRP hasn't been around for forever. How long has it been?
I don't know when the program was actually initiated, but it was highly improved. I know it was around during Mad Cow because everybody was lined up trying to buy it.
Sure.
So it's been around at least that long. But it was highly improved during 2020, which coincidentally coincided with the bottom of the market. But they then upped the coverage levels, they upped the subsidies, and they also upped the type of, like in the fat cattle, for example, they went from 65% choice to 85% choice, which is more indicative of today's market. We have a lot better beef out there, and the cattle are higher grade and continue to grade better all the time. And so that became a lot better coverage for them. And we're able to get 100% of the feeder board now, where we didn't used to be able to do that.
Excellent. That's what I was thinking about. I wrote in-depth kind of educational story on LRP in 23. So must have been that 2020 was what was the focus of that.
Yeah. 2020 was a major shift, and it became a viable product at that point. And that's when I started pursuing it actively. And then we've had little changes every year. The crop year turns over on July 1, and they do make changes every year to the program, sometimes minuscule, other times a little bigger. But the changes that we've seen over the last 5 years have all been improvements.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your comments today. We greatly appreciate you having you on here, and look forward to seeing you at Husker Harvest Days.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
On September 9th.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Take care, and we'll look forward to having everyone back on next week's Ag Marketing IQ In Depth.